Hi everyone, welcome back to Solo Talks. That is me. Today it is Sunday, so we are going to be discussing today's haunting hour. So the one that we're going to be discussing today is allegedly one of the most haunted homes in Salem. Salem is probably one of the most haunted places in America just because of the Salem witch trials, and that is what brings us to the Joshua Ward house. So, the Joshua Ward home is a 3-storey federal-style house that was built in the 18th century, and it was very popular because it was built entirely out of bricks. It is located on 148 Washington Street, and I think for a little bit of time it was not open to the public. It was built in 1784 by a wealthy merchant named Joshua Ward, and like I said, it did become very popular, so much so that George Washington actually visited it and wanted to stay at the house. The property itself has a lot of history that is older than the actual home, and this is due to the property's involvement in the Salem witch trials. The house was built on the site in which some of the Salem witch trials took place, and Sheriff George Corwin actually used the site as part of his torture during the Salem witch trials. Sheriff Corwin was famous for being really heavily involved in the trials, and he was described as a very sadistic man. When Joshua Ward, the builder of the home, the home was then given to Salem, the town itself, and actually served as an apartment building. It actually housed many of those that were accused of witchcraft. So moving on to Sheriff Corwin, he would interrogate those accused of witchcraft at the home and would use very sadistic methods in order to get them to confess. He earned the nickname the Strangler because he would tie the accused's neck with a rope and pull the rope down and tie it to their ankles, and this would torture the victims until blood actually came out of their nose. It was rumoured that he actually also used the basement within his own home in order to torture these victims. His methods were actually so severe that the accused often just pledged allegiance to the devil in order to stop the torture. They were usually executed anyway for admitting this, and these practices were actually very legal during this time. Just 3 months into his role, at this point, he transported 5 very infamous witches in 1692. These were Rebecca Nurse, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, Sarah Good and Sarah Wilds. He transported them from jail and into a wooden car where the public actually came to watch their trials. Reverend Nicholas Noyes, at this time, the witches were then passed to him, and it was his job to get the accused to admit their guilt. Noyes demanded Sarah Good to confess to her sins, in which she said, quote, "You are a liar. I am no more a witch than you are a wizard, and if you take my life, God will give you blood to drink," end quote. Corwin then positioned all of the accused above the lake, linking their nooses together, and essentially hung them before their bodies fell into the lake. Sarah Good's words actually came true. Reverend Noyes did die bleeding at the mouth. This was probably due to a little blood vessel that had popped, but at the time, people were very, very superstitious. The bodies were then pretty much buried in a rocky terrain. However, Nurse's family took a small boat that they had to get her body, and from this they then went downstream to the nurse's land and buried Rebecca there. Now we're going to move on to an accusation against a man, which I hadn't really heard of back in those days, but his name was Giles Corey. During this reign of terror, Corwin allegedly took enjoyment out of these very specific tortures. So like I said, the noose tying to the ankles right until their nose had that was his favourite form of torture. In September 18, 1692, Giles Corey's execution was scheduled to follow an accused called Anne Putnam Jr. However, Anne escaped her execution. I'm not sure if it's because she sort of grasped someone up, but I think that's what happened. But unfortunately, Corey wasn't so lucky. Time led on to his execution, and he actually had a lot of accusations against him. June 1692, Elizabeth Woodwell and Mary Walcott watched as Corey entered the Salem meeting house, but apparently at this time he was already jailed. And a ghost allegedly told Anne Putnam Jr. that Corey was the spirit's killer. So I think that's why she got off with her execution. Before the trial, the court wanted Corey to say a formality, which was "by God and my country." However, Corey refused to do that, and no trial could happen unless he said these words. His punishment for this was to place heavy weights pressing on him until he said the words. On September 19th, Corey again refused to confess to these crimes, and Corwin had no choice but to follow through with the laws. Corwin put Corey into the dirt and levelled a wooden board on top of his splayed body, and one by one stones were placed on top of the plank. Corey, however, never ever pled guilty to these crimes. As Corey's tongue began to loll out of his mouth, which was like a sure sign that he was just away to die, Corwin used the tip of his walking stick to push the tongue back into his mouth. Corey unfortunately died shortly after, and his body was unfortunately so crushed that there was no way they could possibly revive him. So we are going to now move on to the ghosts that haunt the property. On April 12th, 1696, at just 30, George Corwin died while slipping in the snow and allegedly had a heart attack. There are many accounts of people feeling a choking sensation on the second floor of the home, and one time when a visitor was upstairs, they suddenly felt like a squeeze at their throat, and they later said that their throat felt very closed up. Many also claim to see an angry Giles Corey. They see that books are yanked from shelves, cold spots in warm rooms, and candles are found in a pool of wax, even though they have been unlit. Candles were often melted into the shape of an S, possibly for the High Sheriff, maybe to do with George Corwin. There have also been sightings of a female spirit, which is also a very common occurrence on the upper floors. In the 1980s, the property was owned by someone else at the time, and they were having a party, and an employee snapped a Polaroid picture, and he expected to see a light-haired woman who was enjoying the party, but once he shook the photo out, he actually saw a dark woman with rough features, and her skin was so pale that it was translucent. Many have left the home with also being covered in scratches and the sensation of being watched. I believe there are YouTube videos of people visiting this home in Salem, and they say that there are dark entities within the house. Obviously I'm in Scotland, so there's no way that I could get to Salem to visit the house. But let me know if you have visited the house. I would love to hear your stories. And if you have any cases or haunted homes you would like me to look into, definitely leave a comment. I will see you on Wednesday for Killer Wednesday.